What's up, guys? We are here today with Leroy from Happy Trailers. We're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the DM coating system. Leroy's been here a couple of times, done some light tours, but today you can see it's a little quiet, so we're going to take a little deeper dive. I've always enjoyed when customers come by and we're able to kind of step through the process. Leroy, how long have you been in trailer business?
I've been for 6 years.
6 years, so he definitely has experience with other manufacturers, how they do things. And again, that perspective is valuable to Diamond C as feedback, not necessarily to copy what anybody else is doing, but just to kind of be aware of what's in the market, how people are doing things. You know, what do we need to do to still further differentiate ourselves? Leroy, today, what do you expect to get out of our visit and our trip through the DM coating system?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, I've seen a lot of different trailers. I've seen a lot of different powder coats, and I have a lot of feedback from my customers that I can bring to you. So I'm really excited to see just a little bit more of what DM coating is all about. All right, so this is, I guess, the beginning. We do have a raw trailer here that's getting ready to go through the line, so I assume this is where it all starts. This is sandblast, right?
So you're right, this is where it all starts. This is media blast. So when we say blast, we're talking about steel shot. One of the things we're very intentional with is when you're taking a product, you can see like we're welding a bunch of different pieces of metal together. You've got some surface flash rust, they call it. You got mill scale from the structural, on the pieces that are structural beam. So you've got to get all that off. You got to get it loosened up, get it ready for a primer, or ready to be washed, then a primer. So it's very important that you use a really aggressive blast. And so therefore, a lot of people have heard of sand. That's what everybody's household name for it is. Right. But we went a step further and we're using a steel shot at over 100 PSI to knock that stuff off, get it loose and ready for wash.
Very nice.
Yeah.
One of the differences.
Yeah, definitely the first difference of the DM coating process. So the cool thing about today is you can see the line is not running, this is not moving. We can actually walk through the booth and be able to see where the magic happens for the blasting. So take a look. So the trailer travels down the line. We didn't talk about it. This whole building has a 2,000 foot long conveyor in it. Every trailer's hung. This line moves from 3 to 6 feet, 7 feet a minute, depending on product mix, what the goals for the day are, how many trailers are going to come through, that kind of thing. So the trailers travel through here. It's important, we looked at, should we automate the blast? That would be, obviously for productivity for us would be a huge thing, but the downside is, automation is hard to be that detailed, that intricate, like getting in all these different designs up under the steel, like in the cracks and crevices. So this is still a manual position, arguably one of the toughest jobs at Diamond C, but one of the most important jobs at Diamond C. So these folks in here really work hard to get all of the surfaces of the trailer blasted clean. You can kind of see this one has been started, but it's not finished. This kind of white ashy look here is a clean surface where they've already blasted. It's got the mill scale down. This is what you're looking for, whereas like out these cross members and still inside have not been blasted yet. So it traveled through here to be blasted. There's a platform in the center, so they kind of get a higher angle. They can be able to get under the trailer. The other cool thing about the blast booth, it does reclaim the blast, which is cool for Diamond C. Not a difference maker for the customer, but for us it's good because it reclaims it and we can actually reuse it a couple of times before it becomes unusable media. So
efficient.
Yep, for sure.
All right, so we're in phase 2 here of the DM coating system. This is the washroom. These trailers here are the ones that just came out from the media blast room, so I guess they're ready to be washed before the next step. Is it just a soapy water? What are we doing here?
Yeah, so step 2, the wash bay is what we call it, is very important. Just as important as any of the other steps, arguably more important, because it takes all those impurities, the things that we loosen up with blast, it rinses them off, but it also, they use several different solutions to set up the metal or the substrate for the next step of primer to really bite down into the metal, because you can use the very best primer and top coat you want, but if the metal is not set up well to receive it, it's all for naught. And so that's what we, in our discovery, when we were setting this building up, we learned that A lot of the problem with the perception of powder in the industry was due to the lack of preparation and intentional steps for the powder to really bite in. So that's why this room is so important in the system.
This sounds like this is probably the most important step. This is crucial to make the paint actually stick.
100%. It can be, if you don't do this well when it comes out, it can be beautiful, but it's not going to last. So this is the longevity of it right here, these two steps.
I've seen the opposite, so that's exciting.
That's
Let's
right.
check it out.
All right, so we're moving from step 2 to 3, which was wash, to now we're headed to the primer booth.
Okay.
But one important step between, it's kind of a sub-step, if you will, is a force dry oven. So behind us right here is a over 100-foot long oven that's powered by natural gas, but it is to take all that moisture, basically bake it out. Like, you can't coat over moisture, obviously. Very important step, but we got to make sure that we get all the moisture off. So it bakes out, and then right here we have an inspection station between the force dry oven and primer, to where the trailer can be inspected to make sure all the moisture's out, and they have some air wands where they're blowing out the cracks and crevices to make sure that they get all the moisture out, getting it ready to go into the primer booth.
Got it. So we're not walking through there because we probably don't want to hang out in 400-degree temperature.
Right, yeah. It would be a little toasty. It's already hot enough in Texas, but let alone 400 degrees.
I thought I'd be used to it, but okay.
That's right.
All right, so now we're at step 3 of the DM coating system. We just made it through the oven after it's been washed. So this would be the primer booth, am I right?
Yes, sir. So primer is a huge, huge piece of the equation. Like, we had to get the other 2 steps right, but again, I mean, we keep saying the most important step, right? They're all the most important. But what we learned, and to be true, in the industry over the years, manufacturers wouldn't use a primer. They would just use direct to metal.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't fathom it. Like, I mean, for liquid paint, for 100 years, we used, had to have a primer. So why would you not prime the metal before you put a top coat on it? So when we started out to switch to powder, like, we knew that it was a non-negotiable. We had to have a primer standard. But then there was actually another level of, there's obviously different grades of primer. So what we ended up choosing to go with is a zinc-enriched epoxy primer, which is actually has the zinc particles in it help it bite into the metal and localize any issues. So yeah, you can still fracture it. It's not indestructible. But what I'm getting at is, if you fracture the coating, it does not allow the moisture to leach under the coating and spread throughout the trailer. Whereas with a lesser grade primer, or no primer especially, that's what happens. I've seen trailers going down the road that have huge sheets of powder coat missing. Well, number one, it's probably because they didn't prep well, but number two is especially they didn't have a primer to localize that any issue, and odds are moisture got under it, started leaching through it, and within a year, 2 years, 5 years, I mean, the trailer has sheets of coating coming off of it. You can't really see it right away, but then whenever it starts happening, it's too late.
We've all seen it a few years down the road, even a year down the road.
Yeah, it's like a disease. And so that's why this zinc-enriched epoxy primer is so incredibly important in this step, is to, especially again, when you get into like North Dakota, Canada, into those conditions, or even in the coast, Florida, where you
salty.
have salty, and you have a lot of corrosive things in the environment on the ground during the winter up north. And so that's where this primer really comes in clutch.
So once again, it'll chip because it's not indestructible, but there's no way this will come off in sheets.
Yep, 100%.
There you go.
It's one of those things, man. We just chose, we will not sacrifice. Like, it's not a cost thing for us. Like, yes, we have to, at some point, it has to be palatable, like the customer can afford it. But when we're talking about a premium product and one of the most premium trailers in the industry, like, we can't sacrifice when it comes to a coating that protects the investment for the consumer. Like, we can't.
Absolutely, and it shows. This is cool. All right, so we are, I believe, now at step 4 of the DM coating process. So this would be the top coat room. We were just in the primer room, and I know that after that, of course, you got to put on the top coat. Does it go through another bake cycle before we get here, or what happened in between?
That's a cool question, because most would think that, right? That primer is going to be somewhat solidified, but Sherwin-Williams pioneered the development of what's called a one cure system, And so, or dry on dry, either one is are their terms to describe it. But we put the primer on as a powder primer. It doesn't get baked. It comes around, comes through the top coat, and then we actually put the top coat on just dry again,
straight
powder
on top
again.
of the dry primer.
Right. And so once we'll see the last step is it going through the final cure oven, and what it does is it actually melts those two together all at one time, and then they're biting into the primer's biting into the substrate. So it's called one cure, and it's arguably a tougher coating overall because it's all bonded. Okay. Like it's bonded and it's bites into the frame. So that's the one cure technology.
That does make sense. I've seen it both ways. I've seen it the other way where you put on the primer, bake it so that the top coat has something to stick onto.
Yeah.
But it sounds like this has been engineered so that all happens together.
Yeah. You have the bonding. What happens, there's some variability in baking the primer, because if it's overbaked, underbaked, then it's all for naught, right? Whereas this is more consistent because you have one bake cycle that again bonds them together, and then they're adhering to the trailer. So you don't have the variability. Oh, well, if the oven was off by 50 degrees on primer, it makes your top coat kind of worthless, honestly, because it doesn't bite in, whatever. So this actually is more consistent, provides a more consistent product for the consumer.
Makes sense to me.
The other thing about top coat at Diamond C, right now we're in the black booth. So everything that comes through this booth is black. About 40% of the trailers that we put through here, or that go through the DM coating system, are black. The 60% is a mix of other colors, which the most popular color is metallic gray out of the colors. And so the booth, you can see kind of through the window there. The other booth is the color booth. Cool thing is Diamond C has about 8 standard colors that are no additional charge, where a lot of other manufacturers charge for anything other than black. Yeah. And it was important for us to keep that when we changed to the DM coating system, because my dad back in the day when he started Diamond C was really about differentiation and allowing the customer to kind of express themselves, through their trailer, and having a cool color, and whether they wanted a fleet of metallic gray or white or red or whatever it was, that it allowed them to do that and not be taxed for it. So anyway, super cool that it's all the same DM coating process, but you get to select your colors. And then it goes beyond that. We have some colors that are an upgrade, but then, hey, if you have this certain colored Dodge truck that you want us to try and match, we have a custom color option as well, that it's usually not like dead on, like gonna match it just 1,000%, but we get really close. So it's kind of cool to have a powder coated trailer to match your vehicle.
I love it. I mean, it's down to the paint coat. It's very close.
Yeah, definitely. Sherwin-Williams, our provider, has a way to be able to formulate a powder for us that matches those colors. So
that's something that I just simply haven't seen offered anywhere else. So I think that's super cool.
For sure. It's all about that differentiation, baby.
There you go. All right, so we're here at the end of step 5. This is the final bake oven. Am I correct?
Yep.
So this is after the primer and powder coat have both been shot, goes through here, and this is where the shiny trailer comes out.
That's right.
Nice.
Yep. So if you've seen powder coat. If you haven't seen powder coat, it goes on, and you saw in the clips earlier of how it goes on as a pixie dust kind of fog that covers the trailer. Then once it comes through this oven is 165 feet long, travels through here about 400 degrees, and it turns that powder into a gel, which kind of and then encapsulates the trailer or the metal. Okay. And so that is where, again, we talked about the primer and the top coat being bonded together. That happens in here. It gels, bonds together, and then turns into a beautiful, long-lasting finish. Sounds super cliche, but that's what happens, right? It gets shiny and hard, and that's what makes the cool coating at the end of the process. So we'll take a look down the line here. We have several trailers that are actually cured. They're on the line to be finished, and lighted, wired, stickers, all that kind of stuff, and see the finished product.
That's cool. This is almost the complete finished trailer once it's through with here.
Yep.
It's just time to put on the components.
That's right.
Very nice. All right, so here we are with the finished product. Here's one that just came. It's fresh out of the oven. It's beautiful. It's got a shiny paint, and it's done.
Yep, for sure. It's cured, ready to go. The cool thing is, after we talked about, it cures it to 99%, right? Like, you touch it, They're not going to fingerprint it as they're doing the stickers,
Yeah.
the wiring, all that good stuff. It's really actually ready to go. The only thing we don't do on the line is floor them. So we pull them over through a lane and put the wood floor in them. But this one is essentially after that wood floor, final QC inspection, obviously, and then it's ready to go. It's ready to ship out to maybe even Happy, but to a dealer across the
Just be
nation.
a Happy trailer.
That's right. So it is ready to go.
I definitely learned a lot today. There's a whole lot more involved in the DM coating system than what I originally thought. Thanks for showing me around.
Yeah, no problem, man.